Hi, everyone. It's Marcia Martin, the Heart Healer. And today we're talking about, should I take it personally? Now, the reason I wrote about this is because a friend of mine called to say that someone had said something that was not pleasant to her. It really wasn't to her, though. It was just sort of in passing. And she said, should I take it personally? And then that began a whole series of conversations and emails that I was receiving from people who were feeling like, wow, what's going on? People are saying some pretty mean things. Some of it is directed directly to the person, and some of it is just tossed out there. And everybody was saying, wow, what should I do? How should I respond? So that's why we're going to my guides today, to our helpers, and just finding out what should you do in this energy that is so disruptive. It is wonderfully beautiful and enriching energy. However, it's energy that none of us have ever encountered before in the physical form. So we don't have any accurate way of judging how we're going to respond. And some of us are doing better than others. Those who have yet to awaken may be feeling really uncomfortable. And the only emotions that may be available to them are things like anger, resentment, jealousy, pain. So if you are the one who is awake, and perhaps others in your family are not yet awakened, you need to be a little bit aware of what they may be going through, and you might have to remove yourself, take an energetic step back. Don't be available to hurt and criticism all of the time. It's obviously good to be our loving selves as much as we can. But if somebody has not yet experienced the awakening, or they're still caught up in a lot of pain and dissatisfaction, you may need to just remove yourself from that vibration for a period of time. This is when I always tell people, take a bathroom break. Nobody can argue with the fact that you need to use the restroom. And it will give you a chance to take a deep breath, use the heart breath method that I've taught you. Take a deep breath, clear out the negativity and whatever is feeling bad to you, whatever you picked up while you were in the space with that other person. And then re-shield yourself. And if you decide, you can go back into the conversation. But let's be wise. Let's not put ourselves in a place where we can be fodder for somebody else's temper. Let's not cause that to happen. Let's be responsible. Let's take responsibility for what we're thinking and feeling and the situations that we're allowing ourselves to be placed in. So, should I take it personally? Here are our guides. Dearest hearts, just the question shows your confusion. Let us begin with a basic understanding of who each one of you are, what the ego's role is, and who you are to the divine. Once you understand the role of each player, you'll be better able to decide questions of this kind. Each decision about how you react is personal to the individual, but the choice of reaction is always that, a choice. You are never forced to react one way or another to a circumstance, but your reaction will determine your experience of the circumstances. So, please, the first thing you need to master is your reaction. How are you choosing to respond if somebody says something to you that is not very nice? You can obviously choose to be offended, or you can choose to understand, well, I get it. They're having a hard time. I'm just going to let it go. And then remove yourself from the situation if it's making you uncomfortable. Don't stay and be in their company and feel like you're being beaten up. You have the ability to move out of their energetic space. Now, what we are going to be talking about today is pretty deep. So hold your questions till the end, but please, if you have a question, write it down, and we want to hear it, because we're really going into a very deep concept that can be very confusing. So I want to make sure we really get this clearly. At least get a clear understanding of it. You may not be able to put it into practice immediately, but begin making steps in that direction. Start on that journey. This is probably something you'll have to hear over and over and over again until you really feel comfortable with it, because we are in these physical bodies that appear to be separate, and it is the master illusion. So, back to our guides. Now, let us look at the ego's role in creating reactions and forming your opinions and beliefs about situations. When you ask, should I take it personally, you assume first that you are a separate self, that you do not belong to universal mind, and that what you do and vice versa doesn't affect the greater whole. This is basically saying, I'm by myself, and what I do, think, or say just affects me and perhaps the other individuals that I'm interacting with, but it doesn't go any further than that. Let's examine this belief that's wholly supported by the ego and fosters a feeling of being alone and isolated. If there's a personal you that can be offended, then there must be other personal selves that also can be offended. If we carry this thought further, you're no longer part of the whole, and now you have no reason to treat your brother as you would yourself, because your brother is no longer a part of you. What they do doesn't create a ripple in your pond, and what you do is of no concern of theirs. Looked at this way, the behavior of another now has additional weight. As separate beings, you have the power to hurt each other. As separate beings, it no longer matters what happens to the other person. They're not connected to you. They aren't an interwoven thread in the landscape of your life, so they can be disregarded. They can be dismissed, and they can cause you harm. They, therefore, should be feared. The ego, which believes and feeds off this state of separateness, wants you to abide by this falsehood. Its very survival is dependent on you never realizing the truth. If you become conscious of the unification of the oneness of all, then your brother's welfare is as important as your own, and it's no longer acceptable to hurt them or be offended by them. So let's take a look at this, because if you haven't entertained this mindset before, you could easily dismiss it out of hand, or you could become overwhelmed by this way of thinking. So let's take a look at this. We know that we are here in physical, separate bodies, and that's given rise to the idea that we could actually be separate beings. But when we study physics or any of the laws of the universe, we understand, and even when we look at just nature in action, if you don't want to get into this the specifics of science. Just look at the natural kingdom. Absolutely everything is designed with a symbiotic relationship of some sort. Everything benefits something else. Everything is important and has value to something generally higher up the food chain until the highest member of the food chain finally has finished their journey on this life, and then what they were, whatever they occupied, what they were begins to decay, and that feeds the lowest form of the food chain, and we begin again. So when you look at it that way, and when you look at the natural kingdom or the laws of physics, or you begin studying the universal laws, you realize that we are all interconnected. We are all dependent on each other. It's completely impossible for us to disassociate from each other or from God completely. There's absolutely no way that we can fully cut ourselves off, and they have shared this with us again and again and again and again. So, first of all, that means even if you happen to find yourself in a position where there is no one else in your life, no other person occupying a physical body that chooses to be around you for whatever reason, you are still not alone. You are surrounded and loved and embraced by the entire energetic body, by all of the energy that you are part of, in addition to the energy that you are as a physical body. So you are absolutely 100% connected to everything all the time. Even if you've managed to separate yourself in your physical body from other physical beings or creatures here on the earth, you are still 100% connected to the energetic realm. You don't have the ability to fix that or to change that in any way. So, we are always bound to each other in some way, because each one of the other physical bodies that believes it's separate, or doesn't even have to believe that it's separate, but each person's physical body also is 100% connected to the energetic realm. So we are commingling on the energetic. Our soul, the greater portion of us, stays in the energetic form when we choose to become a physical body. We take only that amount of energy that's necessary for us to move through this journey. The rest of us stays in the energetic form. So we are constantly commingling with all others in the energetic. And even though we occupy these separate physical bodies, we are electrical beings, energetic beings, and our energy expands far beyond the physical body. So we are commingling our energies anytime we happen to be near another person. Therefore, anything you do will subtly affect the other person. Anything they do will subtly affect you, even if no words are exchanged. If words come in or physical actions enter the picture, then of course the attachment or the influence becomes even greater. And that may be the first time that you become aware of it in your physical body. You might say, oh, they said something to me, or they hugged me, or they hit me, or they engaged with me in some way. I'm now aware of it because it involved my physical body. But that's not the first time that engagement took place. It may just be the first time that you became aware of it. So good to keep that kind of distinction and that kind of awareness, because you can run, but you can never escape from being part of the energetic realm. It's not possible. So you are never alone, even though you may have physically isolated your body. And anything that other person does to you will affect that person as well as you. Now, remember, it's your choice how you want to react. So the person comes up to you and says, "Oh, that is such an ugly dress that you're wearing." You can look down at your dress, get offended, say to yourself, "Oh my gosh, I wish I had time to go home and change. I now feel ugly." Or you can look at the person and think, "Oh my gosh, they must be having a really horrible day or a really horrible life." Because in order to want to share that kind of information with another person, you must really dislike the inner landscape that you've created for your own review. Or perhaps the outer landscape that you've created is terrible and you just want to share that with other people because it's so painful to be you. So if somebody were to come up to me and say that, yeah, I might immediately flinch because, those words are power-packed. But then I would energetically take a step back, shield, and enfold them in a blanket of pink and gold light. If I have centered myself and meditated and really gotten clear before I left the house or engaged with other people face to face. If I've allowed myself to live in chaos, I can react any crazy way because I will have no control over my thinking. And I may go to the same level that they're operating from. But if I allow myself to stay in my high place and to really occupy that place of love, joy, and peace, I will feel their hurt, but I will not need to react to it. I'll know it's not directed at me. It's their own personal product that just happened to be thrown at me as a way to make themselves feel better. So remember, we are all together. And anything you do affects another person. Anything I do affects another person, as well as ourselves. So when you are told, love your brother as you love yourself, you must get that inner landscape right. Get in there and do the hard work. Get rid of the trauma and the pain that you're holding on to. Otherwise, you will not be able to move forward freely. Your life is colored by the past experiences that you're holding on to in your heart. And then you are going to assign to the other person all sorts of values that may or may not need to be there. Okay, so this is why the ego fights so hard for separation, for illusions that support beliefs such as you can hurt me or I can hurt you, and the only one to be affected by it is the receiver. If you truly understand that each of you occupies an aspect that is part of the whole, which makes up divine mind, then you would be unable to continue with the delusion of separateness. So the ego that you created says, you're all by yourself. Well, it's your product. You created it. So it's going to say whatever you want it to say. When you join with divine mind, then you are no longer able to fool yourself with those kinds of thoughts that are not true, with delusions of separateness. The fear of being alone and being isolated would also drop away, and the weight of another person's opinion would decrease, for there are no others. There is only God and the different expressions of God that have agreed to journeys in separate physical bodies for the enrichment of the whole. Now, hear this. They absolutely said, you are God. Absolutely. There is only God and the different expressions of God that have agreed to journeys in separate physical bodies for the enrichment of the whole. There is the supreme God that is everywhere and in everything. You are not the supreme everything. However, you are an aspect of God. Otherwise, you could not exist, because everything that exists is part of God. So therefore, yes, you are a part of God. You are an expression of God. Therefore, you are not individuals per se. You are individual expressions of the collective consciousness, which exists under the one umbrella of supreme consciousness, which is God. Again, I got ahead of them in this particular case, but no one is an individual unit that it can be cut off from all else. Everything must exist under the umbrella of the supreme consciousness, which is God. In other words, when the ego, or another word for ego may be undisciplined mind, is in charge of your thought processes and your life, it becomes possible for you to believe you can step away from communion with others, that you can cut yourself off from God by word and deed, and that you can exist as a wholly separate entity and flourish as though you've not eliminated the very life force that makes each breath possible. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the fact that you would only be able to last, 3 seconds? If God were to withdraw the part of you that is God, and God withdrew the part of itself that is in the physical body that is directing your autonomic nervous system, and you were responsible for remembering to breathe and remembering to tell your heart to beat and all of the organs to do what they're supposed to do, you would have time for nothing else. There would be no point to the journey, because all you would be able to learn was how to tell your body to work. But none of us would last more than a few seconds. And even if we disciplined our minds to be incredibly focused, maybe we would get a minute. However, none of us would last long enough to get that minute, because disciplining your mind takes time, commitment, practice. However, this is an ego-based belief system, and therefore false, as all illusion-based products are. So, everything the ego tells you, count on it to be false. If you just move forward from this point and say, okay, if it comes from my ego, I'm just going to say it's not true and start over. You would be better off than constantly questioning when you feel something from God. We want to dig in and dig up the seed, and I hope so, and I don't know, I doubt it. Oh, gee, The ego says something like, you're ugly, and we all say, oh, really? Oh, am I? Oh. We've got it backwards. The ego exists to provide contrast, to create dissatisfaction, to propel you into the search, and to give you something to push against. It has a purpose, but its purpose is not to tell you the truth. It is not to tell you how wonderful you are, generally. Usually it's quite critical. The ego's main purpose is to make you a seeker, to create a burning desire in you to remember the truth of who and where you are, and eventually, the truth of who you came here to be. Nobody plops in here and says, well, I have got no idea why I'm here. I guess I just decided to go on vacation to Earth. No, we all have a purpose. We all have a life plan. We all have a life journey mapped out. What happens is that when we agree to be born into the physical body, to transfer a portion of who we are, that soul being that we are, into the physical body, we also agree to forget that we are this incredibly fabulous, energetic being, so that we will be willing to go on this life journey of exploration. Because if we remember right from the beginning, oh my gosh, I'm this fabulous energetic being, there's no pushing. There's nothing to push against. There's no challenge. And that's the point of the physical journey. The challenge. We all are perfect. Each individual expression is perfect just the way they are, wherever they are. However, they are not complete. That's the purpose of the physical journey, to become complete, to strive for completion. And completion is to be as God is. And that's why you can't ever get it done. There will always be something else to learn. The ego does not serve the purpose of defining you. It's not an accurate portrayal of your strengths and weaknesses or your likes and dislikes. And I want you just to take a minute right now and say to yourself, have I ever changed my mind about something that I like or dislike? Have I ever discovered that I can do something really well that I believed previously that I had no ability to do? Now, if you are believing the ego, it will tell you you can't do that. But since we've all had times when we have experienced just the opposite, we know the ego cannot tell us the truth. It doesn't know the truth. It may perceive one aspect of who you are at this moment, but it doesn't know you in your totality. So it's busy saying to you, you can't do that. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're something not. But it's not true, because we know that we can practice, we can learn, we can grow, and suddenly something we were incapable of doing, we become perfectly capable at doing. And if you want the best example ever, it's a baby. The child is not born walking, and they're not good at it when they start. And if they listen to their ego that would tell them, you can't do that, the child would never put the effort in to walking. The ego is merely a reflection of your experiences as seen through the microscope of, the world is out to get me, and I'm not powerful enough to defend against it. Thinking small is a product of the ego. Yes, I know there are a lot of braggadocious people, but they are still thinking small. They do not, if they really believed in themselves and who they were, they wouldn't need to brag about it. They would just emit that. The bragging shows you, gee, underneath I'm not feeling secure. The ego always comes playing small because the whole purpose is that you want to push against it and prove that you can. So, allow it to play small. Just don't stay there. You're not your ego. The ego is not your truth, and it has no moral turpitude. Lying, cheating, blaming are all devices used by the ego in a battle for its life. The ego knows it's a mental construct, but it's just hoping you never find out. The ego wasn't created as a God product. We created it as something to reinforce our belief system when we got here so that we would continue on these journeys. We want you to understand that the ego is not evil. So you don't go beating yourself up. It's not out to get you, and it's not deliberately trying to trip you up. But it was created by you as a secondary product, not directly communicating with the divine. Interesting. The ego has no access to divine truth. That's why it's able to tell all these crazy lies and make you believe them. It's a means of expression that's not focused on the soul's relationship with its divine origins. Now, you may wonder, what's the purpose of creating a mechanism that seems to be designed solely for the purpose of keeping you off track? And for that answer, you must turn to your divine connection. Remember, to your Creator, you are perfect. There is nothing about you that needs improvement, change, or an upgrade. You, just as you are loved totally and unequivocally. That's the way it's always been and will always be. There's nothing you can do to change God's relationship with you. And I have shared with you over and over and over again, no matter how evil you perceive yourself to be or another person, you will never be able to change God's relationship with you or with that other person. It is a relationship based on your perfection. You will always be loved. They will always be loved. However, it is you, the microcosm of God, that seeks to become the fullest expression of itself. We are the ones that are seeking. We want to grow. Each energetic unit has a desire, and that desire is to grow ever closer in likeness to the oneness that is the Creator. Everything in existence desires to be something even better than it already is. Growth isn't possible without experiences that show us that which we do desire and that which we no longer desire. You know without question that you desire to grow into a fuller expression of God. It's a yearning attached to every energetic particle. This desire to return home to itself as a better, broader, more expansive version always exists. But there's no opportunity for growth in the energetic realm, which is a place of instant manifestation. While you're in the energetic state, your creation is effortless. It's a think and it appears flux of energy. And boy, that sounds magical to the frustrated inhabitant of the physical body. But when you're in the energetic, you are absolutely without inspiration. You are expending no effort. You're not getting the thrill of, I did it! That high that comes when you overcome an obstacle. It's with great glee that you agree to the dense physical plane with its confining body, unruly ego, and its confusion about source. There's no better classroom, no finer teacher, and no quicker transformation than the journey of the physical. If you want to grow, you come into a physical body. Your belief in separation from each other and from God makes it possible for you to believe you're less than, not capable of, or vulnerable to insult and injury. It's this very perceived weakness that makes you superior students, ready to grasp new truths instead of being offended by the enemy of your imagination. Let's just look at that again. It's this very perceived weakness that makes you superior students, because we feel that there's somehow a possibility that we could be less than perfect, and we are so desirous of growing. We are really wonderful at grasping new truths, but we must be careful that we do not latch on to products of the imagination that are not true, that are ego-based, and become offended by them, because that's going to put you off the path. That makes you feel separate. That makes you feel that it's possible that someone outside of yourself exists and that they can hurt you, or that you can hurt them. And that does not help you grow in your fullness to God. So instead of taking offense, express gratitude. They've catapulted you into a new dimension of understanding of oneness and of knowingness. They've helped you return back into the arms of God. Now, I know this sounds, whoa, like, are you kidding? This person just said something horrible to me. But I guarantee you that if you spend your time in the heart space, clearing out the trauma and the limiting beliefs and the hurt and pain, or let's call them something different, your doorbells, so that when somebody pushes that doorbell, they are ringing at a vacant home. You're not home to answer. You're not there with trauma and triggers so that you will immediately feel insulted or injured by what they say or do. You'll have a chance to take a breath, to make sure you're in your high place of love, joy, and peace. And then you can choose how you respond. I had every doorbell ringing that was possible to ring, I think, at one point. I know how difficult it is to step back and say, I'm not home. It took me years and years and years of practice. We are now in a different energetic space, and it's much, much, much easier and lighter. And as I tell you every week, those of you who need help, contact me, call me for a consultation, send me an email. I offer a 30-minute consultation free of charge. Take one of my classes. Get the education and support that you need in order to make it easier for you to stay in that high place and have no doorbells ringing. It's a very painful place to be when somebody can come up to you and push any button and you have some answering trigger. It makes life really tough. So let's take a look at what they shared with us. Every decision about how you react is personal. You always have a choice, and I know it doesn't feel that way. But I guarantee you, if you do this heart work, you will be able to make that choice more and more often. No one can force you to believe something. So, I was recently reading a book. It was a fiction book about a community that believed in voodoo. And I thought about conversations that I have had with people over the years, and some of these people were incredibly convinced that dark magic existed. And I've never been much of a student of dark magic, so I never thought about it truly until I was preparing for today and I realized, we really need to address that. Since I had no belief in dark magic and no real interest and hadn't ever been around people who were interested in that kind of thing, it was easy for me to dismiss it. I had no answering doorbell to any kind of dark magic. I had read about it, maybe I had seen movies about it, but I had no real personal interaction with it. So it was completely easy for me to dismiss it and say to myself, this is not real. If I don't believe it, it cannot be. And it became my truth. And it also happens to be God's truth because God can only present us with love. However, if I had grown up in a culture that supported a belief in dark magic, I would have had a completely different journey. I would have had to have proven to myself that my belief was false. I would have needed to do the inner clearing work before I would have been able to accept and understand and fully operate under the belief that no one can do anything to me unless I give them permission. Now that's across the board. It doesn't have to be dark magic or the dark, whatever, the dark rites. No one, absolutely no one can do anything to you without your permission. However, if you're not paying attention or your mind is undisciplined or you haven't done the work, you will not know that. And your chaotic, undisciplined mind may be giving permission without you realizing what you're saying yes to. And you will find yourself welcoming into your life all sorts of crazy things. So if you see a bunch of crazy things coming at you, go first to your mind and start saying, okay, now we need to get a handle on things about what we're thinking. What are we putting out there? Clean up your thoughts. Clean up what you're putting out into the universe so that what you attract back will be more of what you want. Then go deeply into the heart and clean out all of the places where you're feeling unworthy. And plant in that place, I am worthy, I am deserving, I am perfect, I am fabulous. So that as your mind begins putting out higher and lighter and brighter thoughts, your heart will be in agreement, and the heart, which really rules the mind when it's clear and operating efficiently, will begin helping the mind send out the appropriate thoughts. Allow it to be a joint offensive instead of running away or trying to attack back. Just let go of attacking. Go to your high place. Stay there in love, joy, and peace. So instead of looking outside yourself for the cause, for someone or something to blame for the problem, go within and take responsibility. Hey, I get it. I am allowing this to happen. And here's something that you can say throughout your day. My reactions are my choice. No one can force me to do or say anything. My reactions are my choice. No one can force me to do or say anything. If you practice saying that and writing it and living that, you're going to really feel empowered. Because knowing this truth will make you less vulnerable to whatever silly things other people may be sharing. But you have to recognize it's also going to make you responsible. So if you want to play small and blame others, that's your choice. But you will remain vulnerable and under the control of forces which are outside of yourself. And you will feel weak. We all belong to one cosmic body. The ego's version of life is just an illusion because no one can be cut off from God and live in their physical body. Yet that free will that each one of us has been given allows you to choose to believe that. You can believe that that is absolutely possible, and that belief will be true for you until you learn and accept a higher truth. So don't poo-poo the fact that you believed things that were not true. You really did believe them. You were not faking. You were not foolish. Until you have a new belief that's higher and lighter and brighter, that lower energy belief is going to be your truth, and you will manifest circumstances that absolutely reflect that to help reinforce that belief. Each one of us and everything in existence makes up a piece of the whole, which is the divine mind. But the ego likes to control through fear and rumors and lies. Here's the really incredible thing about fear, and this was another conversation I was having with somebody. I realized, you know what? Fear never has to produce an end product. Nothing ever has to happen. It's the possibility that it will happen. It's the threat that it could happen, the what ifs, that are exerting all of the power. There's such relief when nothing happens, when that fear that you had wasn't realized, that before you are even aware, you've become dragged back into that same cycle of fear, because the ego is the undisciplined part of the mind. So the ego is prompting illusions that are false, based on fear products. And it never has to be right, because all it has to do is make you concerned that it might happen, and that will be enough to keep you in line. So the minute you rise up and go to that high place, you're saying to yourself, hey, I understand that there is a part of my mind that is not yet disciplined that can engage in fearful thoughts. But instead of giving into the fear and running away because of the fear, because of the idea that I am afraid, I can just go to my high place, check in with my truth meter, and find out how it really feels when I think about this. And then I'll know, is this something I should fear? Well, absolutely not. Fear nothing. Instead, get the truth about everything and act accordingly. That may mean that you have to avoid certain people and situations. That's okay. That's not being afraid. That's being smart. That's making your life a heck of a lot easier. If you're driving along in your car and the road suddenly stops and just there's nothing but a cliff, you can keep driving and drive off the cliff. You can stop driving and say, I'm afraid I'm going to drive off the cliff. Or you can turn around and go back and say, oh, well, I guess that was the end of that road, or I took a detour. One way you're completely empowered. One way you're completely wiped out and you have to start over. And the other way you're just living in fear. I want you to choose to be empowered. The ego, that undisciplined mind, has that purpose of pushing you into being a seeker. The ego has the view, the world's out to get me, and I'm not powerful enough to fend against it. But that is not true. And it's not your truth. It's not focused on your relationship with the divine. Because the ego's only purpose is to be that force that we can push against. Each energetic unit is filled with a desire to become more like the Creator. And the ego just is so annoying. It helps us identify what we want and what we don't want, and we grow with each opportunity. Once you drive up to the road and you have the choice, drive off the cliff or be afraid or turn around. When you turn around, you say, "What? I make great choices. I can really trust myself. I made that great choice." If you didn't have that opportunity or that experience, you may never know that you can make great choices. Remember, the energetic realm is instant manifestation. You think it, it appears. It's hard to grow when everything is just constantly there for you. You grow a little, but you don't get that thrill of overcoming something that was formerly difficult for you. It's like riding the bicycle. Remember how incredibly thrilled we were when they took the training wheels off and we could actually balance? Well, the energetic realm is almost like riding a tricycle through life or riding with training wheels. Really difficult to fall over. But because it is so difficult, there's really no way to get that huge leap forward when you overcome something that has previously proven to be so difficult for you. You don't get to take your training wheels off. And remember the thrill when you first figured out that you could ride a bicycle. And did we fall? Sure, we all fell. We all had scraped up knees. But that didn't stop us. We kept going. We were determined. We were going to figure it out. Think of life like riding that bicycle, that first few weeks, learning how to ride without training wheels. You really had to practice. You had to be disciplined. Apply that to your life now. Don't let your mind go crazy and run away with all different thoughts. Discipline. I refuse to entertain these thoughts of fear. I'm going back to my high place. I like it there, where there's love, joy, and peace. It feels good. It lets me expand. I find joy there. That would be taking off your training wheels with every thought. That would be allowing you to really transform. Transformation is fastest through the physical journey. Remember, it's the belief that you can be separate. Just a belief. It's not possible, but it's the belief that you can be separate that allows you to entertain thoughts that are filled with lack, with fear, with desperation. If you believe you are part of the one that is everything, then there can't possibly be any lack. If you're part of everything, then what's missing? Nothing. If you believe that you are part of the most infinite intelligence ever, then what could you not know? What could you be afraid of? Nothing. There's nothing to fear because you know the truth about everything. And if you know that you're part of everything and you can discover the truth about everything, then you cannot feel desperate, lonely, isolated, confused. Because that incredible mind, that infinite intelligence is part of you and also can be accessed by you directly from your heart to God's heart. What you're really saying is, well, if I'm part of everything, then there's nothing left that I can be less than. Therefore, the idea of separation is a necessary illusion to keep us searching. As long as we think that we're separate, when we begin our journey, there's a reason for us to keep searching and pushing and pushing and pushing until we get to the place where more of us is recognizing the fact that we're joined with God than the part of us that's still kicking and screaming and not wanting to be brought into the bigger picture. But by that point, we have invested so much time that our mind has become better disciplined, and the thought of moving from that place back to the chaos is absolutely abhorrent. So that's why we don't need to stay in the chaotic place, why we move into an ordered, disciplined mind as we become more and more dedicated seekers of God and of truth. Because once you reconnect with all that you are, it feels so good. You can't possibly imagine not being connected to it. So then you are doing the work for a different reason, which is to maintain the connection, as opposed to when you began to try to find a way to establish it. Your deepest desire is to return to that state of centered balance, where you recognize that you are whole. And what I'm seeing more and more as we move more into this energy, this very light energy that makes it so much easier for us to connect with the energetic realm, is that we are becoming more and more crystalline in our composition. It doesn't mean our physical bodies are going to decay quickly and will just be crystal bodies of light. But when you see yourself connected between heaven and earth, you will see more of a lightness to the body, more sparkly sort of effervescence. Whereas before, the column that was created between heaven and earth when you extended your energetic being was a little bit more, I guess opaque is it wasn't opaque. So, I guess translucent. And now it's just sparklier. It's like we have better, clearer access. So I want to encourage each and every one of you to absolutely dig into your heart, get into that deep heart connection with God. And if you need help learning how to meditate, I have a class, my website, MarciaMartinTheHeartHealer.com, Marcia spelled M-A-R-C-I-A, Marcia Martin the Heart Healer. There is a class, a meditation class, connecting with the inner infinite. And that will help you get that deep heart connection. Also, there are meditations that I have put up on YouTube, Marcia Martin the Heart Healer on YouTube. Listen to those meditations. I have a 28-day program of changing your life, of addressing yourself in more self-love. This is completely free. It is a journey towards self-love. It's on YouTube. Start listening to those once a day and doing the exercises that are suggested there for you, or doing one of your own that feels even better. But do the disciplined work of connecting with you, and you will begin to receive such incredible relief from the chaos. The chaos of the world will be much less affecting you. The chaos of your own mind will dissipate and finally just disappear. And you will feel so much more empowered and sure of yourself and who you are. It's just so important, especially at these times, when you may be affected by family members and friends who haven't yet stepped fully onto their path. And they are feeling all of these new energies pouring onto the planet. And they have no way of dealing with them. They don't know. They feel very confused and uncertain and weird. And the only emotions that are available to them are those that are on the lower register. And so they're reaching out, and oftentimes they're being cruel, unkind, and not fun to be around. So I want you to be protected. Those of you who are on the journey, the awakened journey, get protected. Be less vulnerable. Don't take it personally. They truly do not know what they are saying or doing, and they are merely reacting. And those of you who have made the journey from reaction to choice can choose not to be offended. Please make that choice. It will make your life wonderful. Now, I spent a long time talking. This was a really deep, difficult subject, but I promised I would leave time, which I really didn't. But if anyone has a question, *2, please raise your hand. Let me check on our question and answer. Okay. Let me check to see anybody with a raised hand. All righty. Difficult subject, a lot to take in, a lot to understand. Just spend time with it. It probably was not a eureka moment today. Maybe it was. I hope it was for some of you. But just plant some seeds. This will continue to grow. I'm still learning this. After all these years on my personal journey, I'm still learning this. So be easy on yourself, be loving and kind, and plant the seeds. You've got truth meters, every single one of you. Do not allow the ego to run away with information telling you something that is not true. Check first. It may be true. You may have hit upon a truth that is absolutely correct. Something like, you are loved and you are not alone. God is always with you. Absolute truth. But I can be hurt, I can be defeated, I can be wounded. These are not truths. Your authentic self, your being, the being that you are truly are, cannot be hurt in any way, shape, or form. The physical body can be worn out. It can have performed its purpose for this lifetime, and it can be done. But you, the only part that is you, take all the information that you've gained on this journey, you add it to our collective consciousness so everyone has access to your learning, and you make it a part of your being so that the next journey that you embark on in the physical, you'll have that to draw on as well. But you are never destroyed. You just keep growing from strength to strength. All right, all my beautiful lovelies, I thank you all for being here today. I want you to know that you are loved and you are never alone, and you are perfect right where you are and right as you are. You're just on a journey to completion. So until next Wednesday, I'm sending you all my love.